Well, good evening, everyone, and thanks for joining us for another episode of Progressively Yours Health and Wellness Podcast. I'm Dr. Imani Ma'at.
I'm J. Bernard Kynes Sr.
And we always like to start out with something on the spiritual side. So I'm going to turn that over to J. Bernard. Go for it.
We're so delighted that you're joining us tonight. In the spirit of my return from Ghana, a few weeks ago we did our show from Ghana. I still continue to carry with me the spiritual journey of that experience. And so I'd like for you to join in with us if you so desire. But first, to closing your eyes, and I'm going to ring the ting shaws, which in some way brings us to focus on our inside self. So if you will close your eyes for a moment, take in 3 deep breaths through your nose, in and out, as I ring the ting shaws, and offer gratitude as we pay homage to our ancestors. So we come together now in this space and in this place and at this appointed time. We pay homage to the ancestors. Thousands of years and hundreds of years ago, our ancestors who traveled and who walked over 400 miles, chains around their neck, their arms, and ankles, from various tribes that the captors had put together. And they walked 400 miles to the dungeons that would hold them for 3 months, those who survived the torture, before boarding the vessels for the transatlantic voyage to the Americas, South America first, later North America. It is out of the spirit of our ancestors, those who survived all of the torture and the voyage, that we are here. And therefore, we bow in reverence. We do not worship our ancestors, but we pay homage to the suffering, to those who survived, to the legacy that lives within each of us. And as we begin our show tonight, we bow to the ancestors and the cloud of witnesses that join us with this spiritual journey. Ashe.
Ashe.
Namaste.
Namaste.
And amen.
Amen.
Imani?
All right. At this point, I usually like to share an affirmation or a poem. And this is one of my favorite poems. I wrote this probably about 30 years ago, dating myself. This shows up in most of my books. This is in the third Healthy Haiku book, How to Fight Childhood Obesity, One Poem at a Time. It's on Amazon. Shameless plug. But anyway, the name of this particular piece, which is very relevant to what you were speaking about with the ancestors, is called When Spirits Touch. When spirits touch, there's a spark that ignites the soul out of control. When spirits touch, there's a warmth and a glow and an inside smile. Cartwheels of the heart, jumpstart of adrenaline. When spirits touch, no words of validation are needed. To speak when the heart has long since connected is real. Whether for a moment or for a lifetime, it inevitably lasts for a lifetime, because when spirits touch, there's no taking it back.
Amen. Thank you.
You're welcome.
You so very, very much.
You're welcome.
It is my honor and privilege to both introduce and present our featured guests on our show tonight. An outstanding person, outstanding individual who cares for the community, our community in particular, and the people whom she served and worked with. Her name is Dr. Candi Dugas, and we're delighted that she's with us tonight. Just a little bit about her before we have a conversation. And this is a continuous conversation that we were having with Candi on last week. Imani and I were part of her show, and that she will tell us more about in the retreat. But let me just tell you a little bit about Dr. Dugas. Dr. Candi Dugas is a New York Times award-winning Sedona, Atlanta-based writer, dramaturg, producer, plus organizer, compelled to complete freedom. Every project she curates comes from the longing that lives in her heart to help the world be a better place, which includes investing in and collaborating with other creatures created in the image of the divine. Most recently, she wrapped up an 8-day wellness retreat plus conference, Building Freedom, which proposed that for Black U.S. Americans to be fully free, we must intend to be holistically healthy and take all necessary steps in between to arrive at all kinds of liberation. Additionally, she's producing for True Colors Theater the next narrative monologue competition for high school students for the 2022-23 season. Also coming up is a theoretical community event with the Morehouse School of Medicine initiative, Fathers Matters Atlanta. My side story, the Black father shares his truth. So we're so honored that Dr. Candi Dugas will now join us on our show, Progressively Yours. Please welcome her. Thank you. Hey, Candi.
Hey, Candi.
How are you?
We're all doing well. And so we're so grateful that you are here with us tonight.
And
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we enjoyed our discussion so much as part of your conference and retreat. Our particular topic, which you said a lot of what we've discussed came up from some of your other guests as well, but our particular topic was mental health and addressing mental health issues with holistic approaches. and, holistic ways to stay balanced. And so we were like just getting into the discussion, and we're like, it's
Yes.
over. It's like, what? We got to continue this. So I said, so we talked about it and said, we need to have her on our show and we can continue the discussion. So thank you so much for agreeing to join us this evening. And so tell us a little bit before we get specifically into one of our favorite topics of mental health and wellness. Tell us a little bit about your goals for the conference and retreat, and kind of maybe some of the highlights that came out of it, and how people will be able to see and to experience that.
Well, after 3 years of reflection since our 2020 summer of racial reckoning and my own face-to-face trauma with white supremacy in 2019, what kept coming around for me in moments of reflection and contemplation was, what in the world can we do, or I do differently, so that we can get out of this cycle of harm, of racial harm in the US? And then alongside that was Olodumare's question to me of, what are we building in this generation or these generations post-integration? We've got our HBCUs and other things that came out or were born out of our oppression. What are we building as a collective of people today? And that out of all of those things I just mentioned, the goal of building Freedom Retreat and Conference was born, to call us to healing and wholeness as a collective of Black people. Because in my memory, I can't recall any intentional healing, wholeness, or wellness kind of something or another that we've done to date as a people. We've marched, we've had protests, all those kinds of things. But where have we come together with intention to heal within ourselves? So, the whole adage of, to get something that you've never had, you've got to do something that you've never done. And to get to a state of full freedom, I think warrants our doing something revolutionary, something we've never done, something as simple as healing, and so that we can generate a state of being free from within.
Powerful. And I think, as you're saying that, I was thinking about, we've had scattered, or we've had individuals who've taken leadership roles. We've had like the Dr. Sabis. We had, go way back in time, Imhotep, the first doctor, but in terms of our plight in this country, we've had people doing different things in different silos. So I think what you're proposing then is that, we pull those silos maybe down so that we can all connect. I have a little piece that I'm going to run. It includes a physician, Dr. LaJoyce Brookshire, and she's someone that a lot of us have listened to on different radio shows, and she has her own program. And so she's one of those that, we need to bring into the fold, because there's so much that's needed in terms of health and wellness, and our community is not getting consistent, structured messages that we can all sort of buy into and embrace. Right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, so a collective healing movement that has the same level of recognition and scope and publicity as the Montgomery bus boycott, the whole civil rights, that on that level, and along that line.
Candi, would you, as we continue the discussion from last week, would you give us a working definition, with how you're using the word in this context of healing, connected with the word trauma?
Well, the question of how we're defining some of these terms, like freedom and healing, came up almost every day during the retreat. So I think it's important for each person to define that for themselves. I think that all of us are operating along the spectrums, which is a concept that I apply to most things that we discuss in life. and have to decide what level of freedom they want. Do they want to be fully free, or do they just want to be loose? What is it that how are they going to define freedom? And I think that determines how they go after it. And I think we're all in different phases or different places of understanding that we've even been traumatized. I know for me that I have adjusted my understanding of that term over the last couple of years, because I always thought trauma was something very extreme, like being kidnapped, or those kinds of really extreme places that I have not experienced, and I would not have called myself traumatized. But I now understand trauma as being anything that is overwhelming for me. Anything that is too much is trauma. And when we can frame our experiences as such, we'll go a long way towards that. One of the things, as I'm thinking about it, that came up during our fatherhood conversation, the Fathers Matter ATL representative, Dr. J.L. Adolph, that was with us, brought up a sports narrative. He was saying in a lot of sports, when you're out playing the game, you get hit and fall to the ground or whatever, the coaches will assess whether or not you are hurt or if you're injured. And if you're hurt, they bandage you up, you can go back out on the field. If you're injured, they got to bench you. And so we were starting to talk about how so many of us, maybe all of us as Black Americans, with everything that we've inherited from our ancestors that has not been healed or cleared, we're all playing injured. And we don't have more than that, because of the strong Black person narrative and all of that. We don't allow ourselves the space to even be injured and to say we need time away from the field. We need to be benched. And I think that is very critical toward our healing, to even realize how injured we are.
Yeah, I like to play on what you just said, since you used the sports analogy. I used the word from the playbook. And my experience when I was in Ghana for the second time connects with this injured and hurt metaphor. Because one of the things that I learned that this time around, and that I'm myself am working through, is the level of trauma. I want to go back to the two words that I asked you about earlier. The trauma that we as Black Americans have internalized over the years didn't just begin in North America. It began hundreds of miles away from the dungeons that our ancestors were housed in. And I would like for our audience to understand why Africa, and particularly the western coastal parts of the continent and the countries of Ghana, Nigeria, etc., are important. It's because the trauma that those who survived and made it to the Americas is still in our system on a neurological and level, on a psychological level, in our DNAs. And those injuries are so in us that it's easy. Well, it's easy when you're there to see the narrative played out for those of us who are here on this side. And the experience of going, quote, home, as we are welcome when we are there, in and of itself brings its own healing from the historical as well as contemporary trauma that we have so internalized.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we mentioned in our discussion, we were just beginning to talk about epigenetics. And I'm working with a doctor, Dr. Michael Vincent, who the study of epigenetics looks at the role of our ancestors in terms of our DNA and things that we manifest that we don't even know, why we feel a certain way or believe a certain thing or have certain anxieties. Because he says it's in our long bones, it's in our legs, it's in our arms, and we carry it with us. And in epigenetics, it said that our health outcomes are 87% emotions and 17% nutrition. So we're addressing, both, because the emotional part is big. So we actually have these conversations while doing certain tapping, on the body, which, we could probably share in another show, because it would take some time. We'll probably have Dr. Benson come on and explain that. But we do the tapping, and we're also saying certain things, having a conversation. And the next thing you know, someone is talking about an ancestor that they don't even realize that they were connected with, but they may have suffered some trauma. And the person is walking around now in 2022 carrying that hurt and that pain with them. So that's where, it connects with what Bernard is saying about, the trauma goes way back. And you said in the United States or in America, I mean, I would say throughout the diaspora, because when you go to other countries around the globe, you see Black folks living the same way, having the same type of experiences because of colonization and slavery and so forth, and what has been done in the past. I used to teach at Morehouse School of Medicine, and I taught a class on intercultural communications and health. And one of the places that we studied was Australia, and looking at it from a health perspective. And I don't use the term Aborigine because a sister who was in school with me said that's like calling them niggers, and it's not acceptable. It's a term that was imposed. But anyway, when we looked at the health statistics around the health outcomes, we saw parallel levels of drug use, of abuse, of violence, among people, among the Black people of Australia. And it's like, what in the world? What does that come from? And it has to do with so much beyond our control, but the control part, I guess, is what or the fixing it is part of the discussion. What do we do with this? Once we know what happened, how do we help people to heal? And I love what you want to do in terms of bringing people from different disciplines and perspectives, because we all have a different kind of piece of the puzzle that we can contribute to in terms of the healing and really making it holistic.
Say more, Candi, if you will, about the holistic approach as it involves mental health issues.
Well, I think one of the repeated themes that kept coming up during the retreat was, I mentioned one already about injury. The other is connected to that around origins. How did we get to the places that we are now, specifically knowing more about the trauma and the injuries that we carry within, not just in our own lifetimes, but that which we have inherited. There's a lack of education or understanding and access to non-Western ways of spirituality and healthcare, whether that's caring for the health of our bodies or caring for the health of our minds. And that is a significant barrier to full freedom and optimal health. And speaking of colonization, I think this is a critical and pivotal time with the transition of Elizabeth II.
Yes.
I don't even know if I don't have the words right now but it makes a difference when someone who has been the bearer and holder, the container, if you will, to go back to some of the language we used last week, of colonization, that is even characterized and couched in words and labels like a good servant, a faithful servant, selfless. And when I see some of these TikTok videos that show clips of reels from the 70-year reign, and reign of what? What real power without being head of government does this position have? and showing this white figure being honored by dark-bodied people is very disturbing for me, looking at this now. So there's that's in this mix, which brings up the need. Another thing that came up about the origins or whatever, the need today to disconnect or deprogram from Western ways and reconnect or reprogram as best we can with our African ways. That goes a long way toward our healing, wholeness, and wellness. And I was listening to In Class with Carr this weekend, and Dr. Greg Carr, who appears on a podcast called In Class with Carr. And a statement that he made was they put their memories, also their values, their beliefs and such in our heads. And just to sit with that understanding, I think is important and necessary in this whole process of moving towards healing.
You're absolutely right. And there's a picture that I want to show you. I'm gonna have to go get my phone because it illumines the point that you just made in terms of with the death of the Queen. And I and just being in Ghana and seeing that there's no infrastructure, and knowing that the English were the last to leave the area, the country, the colonization and the suffering and the pain continues in our lives today. And I think that is what's so very important. You mentioned the memories and the values. On those dungeons, in those dungeons, on top of the dungeons, live the churches. And so the values of the religious practice was used to indoctrinate those who were captive and those who were the captors, the oppressors, that they internalized. And so the religious ideologies and theologies which carried over to the West, which continue to this day, as you and I know quite well, in our predominant denominations, to help continue this legacy of oppression, not only in the West, but as Imani said, in the diaspora, where all people of color reside.
Yeah.
And we must continue to teach, heal, and educate, our people, and provide a new transformation for healing the body, mind, and spirit.
And that is probably a good segue. I want to, unless you wanted to respond to him, but I do want to show our little clip with Dr. Brookshire talking about nutrition and a particular nutritional supplement that's helping a lot of people who have been dealing with issues. In fact, Dr. Benson is a native of Flint, Michigan, and we know about the water crisis there and all that has done to harm children and families. I mean, so many people have died. We never get a body count from Flint, Michigan, but we know it's killed a lot of people, the water issue there. So I would like to, Candi, did you want to respond to anything that Bernard said before we show that little clip and talk about nutrition? And
just that on the spiritual side with, and the not the spiritual side, but the theological side, that deprogramming from what we have honored and uplifted as the Black church being one of those vehicles or containers to help us become fully free, that is not so. It's too intertwined with Western Christianity to be able to do that. Something that helped us cope during oppression is not going to set us fully free.
I was also thinking as he was speaking about, wasn't it the Nat Turner story where where they showed the impact of the church and how it was used during slavery times, you know, in this, the enslaved people. I never use the term slavery or slaves, but that's also shows a carryover from, like you said, the churches being over the dungeons, and how that played, you know, into the whole institution of yeah, of slavery here in this country. Yeah, I don't like the word, but let's segue a little bit into nutrition as we talk about strategies for healing. Our folks have poor diets for the most part, and with many people still eating a slave diet, which, you know, is not meant to sustain you. It's not meant to build your cells or your mind, your brain, your bones. None of that. It's meant to keep you in a slave mentality, if you will. You know, so we need to do what we can do to free ourselves by making better choices than those that are necessarily imposed on us. So anyway, our producer Toya in the background is going to show us this little clip, and it'll give us something to talk about and chew on a little bit.
Hello, I'm Dr. LaJoyce Brookshire. Welcome to What You Need and Why. And today I want to have a conversation with you about a product that I use every day called Micro Daily. Yes, it is an inflammation zinger. It knocks out inflammation, boom, 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 like nobody's business. And a strong immune system is chronic to fighting illnesses and diseases and viruses. Oh yes. So what I do every day is I take a pouch of this, and I use it in my smoothie, actually. But my second one of the day, I just use it in a glass of water. And I want you to watch this, because this is going to go from like a lemonade yellow to a nice golden yellow before we're finished with this conversation. Just take a peek. I want to also show you that Dr. Prasad, who created this Micro Daily product, he also created it initially for the military, and he wanted to bring it to the public, and they said no, and he left and started his own company called Engage Global, and this is how I got my hands on it. True story. I had fallen and face down actually in a store and caught myself in full plank. Thank you very much. But I had fallen and caught myself, and the next day I actually felt like I had been steamrolled. True story. And this product had arrived in the mail to me for me to try. So I said, you know, the next morning when I woke up, I said, I better get across the street. My office is next to a hospital, and really check myself out and see if I'm okay, because I felt horrible. So I had a sample of this Micro Daily, and I had a sample of the powdered hydro. So I took 2 of these pouches and I put it in a glass of water with ice, a big tall cup with ice, and I took 4 of these because I'm that girl. I just want to see if it really works. Plus I was in pain and I didn't want to take an over-the-counter drug. So while I was in the waiting room, I drank my cup of this. I took my 4 capsules of this, and by the time they x-rayed every part of my body, I literally was 70% better. So I walked across the street to my office when initially I had hopped from my office to the hospital, and I was just amazed, and I have been sold ever since. And I called my friend Cornelius, and who sent me this stuff, and I said, I don't know what that was, but I need some more, and I need it now. And so I have been taking it ever since. Dr. Prasad, who created this, he created it for germ warfare. That's what he said. He created it for germ warfare for such a time as this, right now where we are today. He also has recently created this formula, and this is Micro Daily EMF formula. It's brand new, it's just out, and because, as you know, inflammation, EMF radiation is very real, and it's very harmful to our health, and I am just floored at how we are allowed to be subjected to these dangers. When how many scientists, let me see, I wrote this down because I was so floored. Over 500 studies have been done about the harmful effects of EMFs on our body and on our health. And I'm telling you, that's just not acceptable. So instead of crying about it, protect yourself, because the horse is out of the gate and there is no bringing it back. EMFs is on the loose along with 5G, and any devices that you get moving forward will be 5G. So hang on to your 4G or your 3G devices as long as you can, and protect yourself with the Micro Daily that has all of the micronutrients in it. And this EMF radiation, it helps these cellular defects that contribute to increasing the risk of developing neurological abnormalities. So there's a little extra oomph in this one, and this regular one is just as equally as powerful, but this one has the extra kick to protect us from the EMS. And of course, just like your little jewelry, my little magnetic jewelry on my ears, on my neck, on my wrist, because I'm in front of a screen all the time, and so are many of you, as we are forced to do in this season. But it is okay. Again, protect yourself. Take your Micro Daily. I'm gonna drink it. Look how beautifully golden this has become. Yes, just since we've been talking, told you. And take your Micro Daily. Look below and I'll tell you how to get it. Join me tomorrow on What You Need and Why. God bless you.
I just love her. she's wonderful.
Good.
I've been hearing her for
Yeah.
years on the radio. I'd never seen her, actually. And then when I saw her speaking about this, I was just introduced to these products. And I'm introduced to everything all the time, every day. And I was really impressed by the fact that she has spoken about the EMF radiation. That one of them helps to fight that, but inflammation and so many things that are affecting us. And she also said that the neurological damage from the EMF rays. So that's something that, and like her, I wear the jewelry. Bernard wears the jewelry. We have things on us to protect us, and so that's like another whole discussion in and of itself. There's so many things. Those of us sitting in front of the computer and the TV. It can be real dangerous. So I heard, and I'm not sure if there's truth to this or not, but I heard, I think in China, that families that have 2-year-olds and younger are not allowed to have flat screen TVs because of the radiation coming off of them, because it harms the children. And just think about all the children here walking around with phones, with pads, talking on their computers and playing with the computers and the technology all the time. So there's so many little things that we can do to protect ourselves, mind, body, and spirit. But certainly nutrition is one of those. So I would definitely recommend checking out the Micro Daily products. And there are a lot of good things. We've talked about isogenics on this program as well. And those are really good products as well. So what are some of the nutritional things that you use or recommend, Candi? Are there certain habits that you think you have that that you may take for granted, and other folks are like, oh, water, oh, air, breathing,
I think meditation is important. Daily connection, and a meditation is different from prayer, which is different from affirmations.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's important, to stay connected to energy that is around us and that is greater than us, to help guide us in what we choose to do, so that when we are eating or drinking things that are not best for us, we're not comfortable with it. We know that we have strayed away from something that is not good for us, or that maybe we don't know. Maybe we have not had any exposure to better eating habits. And when we have a sensitive way about us that meditation can help nurture, then that can help us toward making nutritional choices that are good for us, as well as making ourselves aware and educating ourselves and allowing ourselves to have access to practices like acupuncture and regular massage, that you don't necessarily hear about. And actually that's another ding for the Black church, in that when we talk about the kinds of foods, the slave diet, so to speak, you're going to get a good fried meal with some collard greens and other vegetables that have been cooked so long the nutrients are gone, and those kinds of things when you go to a traditional Black church that may have repasts after the worship experience. And so that's the criticism that I now have. Another criticism that I now have with the Black church, as far as not promoting healthier lifestyles for its parishioners at a time when it had the most influence over the greatest percentage of Black people.
So to that point, Candi, you were listing some of the antidotes that I have written for discussion. You listed meditation, and I very much appreciate mindfulness meditation. I spent some time with John Kabat-Zinn and doing mindfulness meditation, which I actively participate in. You mentioned yoga, which is another exercise that Imani enjoys, the hot yoga. I don't.
He gave me his mat. He really doesn't like it.
I like yoga. So I engage in it 3 times a week. And so other antidotes that we can employ are swimming. I enjoy swimming, walking. We have to move. We have to keep moving. When I was in Ghana, we had someone preparing our meals for us, and it was very tasty. And I asked Chef, I said, what are some of the seasonings that you have in this food? And she said to us, we put moringa in everything that we prepare. And I've been taking moringa since 2015. And what most people do not know is that moringa is 10 times more powerful than vitamin C. And in synagogue, the Morehouse School of Medicine did a study of why when COVID was reaching its peaks here, it was very low and very minimal on the continent and in the countries of synagogue, Ghana. And so the chef says, we eat Ghana and garlic every day to fight against COVID. And so when we are out shopping, these people are close to each other, no mask, no one is coughing and sneezing, and I'm going, what's wrong with this picture? And I said, well, they're ingesting moringa, which is strengthening their immune system, 10 times stronger than vitamin C, and they're getting an abundance of vitamin D. And studies have shown that we here in America, particularly as Black people, our vitamin D levels are low, and we need vitamin 3. Bless you.
Thank you.
And we need vitamin D3 with K2, so it breaks down the vitamin D to help strengthen and boost our immune system. So another nutritional plug that I want to add is for persons to really consider and investigate and do some research on taking moringa along with vitamin D3 with K2, which is very, very important. And we have to move. We have to do some levels of exercise, even as we change our diet. You were talking about the fried meals. And when you say fried, as a clergy, I was thinking she's about to say fried chicken. She's going to have that fried chicken or the fried fish.
Yep.
But we have to shift our diets for our digestive system, because the gut has more neurons than our brain. And so the gut health is very, very important, because it's providing information to the brain to protect and regulate and communicate with all of the organs within the body. So holistically, mind, body, and spirit for our health is very, very important.
And we had a session during the retreat about movement. Invited one of my college classmate friends to talk about. He's a personal trainer and an animal flow instructor, and talked about the importance of movement and that our bodies were created to move. And in our Black community, especially if we had any connection with the Black church at all, we've been poisoned and held back by the whole respectability politics that I understand we created in response to one of the results of having been enslaved, and that our bodies were objectified and so on and so forth. But that whole Puritan narrative of covering your bodies and all that kind of thing has been detrimental to our being healthy with our bodies, to movement, to even knowing what it looks like. We have a neighbor in the community where my family home is, who had 2 hip replacements, and her spiritual practice and faith is all about large shirts, wears skirts, no pants, and those kinds of things. And that kind of thought process that governs how a woman will dress typically is also accompanied by a theology and a belief system that puts us out of touch with taking care of our bodies, of not knowing what our inner workings look like, especially in our genital area, so that we would know when something is wrong and feels wrong before we ever go to a doctor. And being available to classes like yoga. I mean, you're not going to do yoga in a long skirt, you know. And so, and if you can even think that yoga is available to you, that yoga is not some kind of blasphemous practice because it's not in the Bible.
Right.
Yeah. And so those are more of the barriers that we need to get rid of in order to be optimally healthy and holistically healthy.
Absolutely. I think being in touch with our bodies is so important, you know, and being able to support it and knowing, and even listening to our bodies. You know, I can walk down an aisle in a regular supermarket, an aisle with the cookies and the candies, and I can feel, you know, I mean, I've been into sugar all my life, you know, so it's one of those things I'm still working on. I don't have it perfect yet, but I know how detrimental sugar is to the body. I mean, sugar is as much of a poison as crack cocaine is. And and a lot of people don't know that. They just eat, you know, they'll eat sweets, you know, over and over and over throughout the day, and not even realize that the damage that it's doing to their cells and their brain and the bones and everything else. So, you know, we have to balance it out with the exercise, with better food choices, but also with the exercise. Sweating is so important. That's why I like hot yoga, because you sweat like a pig. You know, you just like drenched by the end of the session. I'll be there tomorrow at 10 o'clock in the morning. But yeah, we have to. And so again, it takes me back to why we were so excited about your approach, which is really bringing people from different disciplines so that people get the holistic approach. They get all of the different pieces, you know, in one package, so to speak, because that's really what we need. You know, it is.
I want to add to what you said and what Imani is illuminating, and her point is we're talking about healing trauma, back to the opening statements, and massage, acupuncture, all those are important because as a people, we have so internalized the trauma from the capture, the enslavement, the transatlantic voyage, which lives in our genes, and the body holds the trauma. Memories. And the way talk therapy is only one element which the church did not promote. And punished, quote unquote, punished for that. And when I was pastoring, and I won't go into that story. But the body has to be touched, and this is why massages are so important. I'm reading this text entitled "The Body Keeps the Score," and the author Bessel points out that people who have been traumatized from childhood trauma, could be emotional abuse, physical abuse, rape, both men and women, for that fact. And the body stores that, and anything can trigger those memories which are unconscious at any moment in time. And so when you talk about toward freedom, now the way that I think about this freedom is not political freedom, because the early church in 50s, 60s were working toward political freedom. Yep. And that freedom got used in that way. What we're talking about is mental and spiritual freedom from within oneself, to freedom from oneself from being enslaved to the indoctrinations that our mind has locked into. And that's hard work, and it takes a long time. And so, as Imani has pointed out, how appreciative we are, and to be a part of the movement that you are advocating, that we can spread a different message. We're not anti-church, but we know that the church has its critical issues and also needs its own sense of transforming in this, and to send forth a different type of message. So the freedom that we are making reference to is internal. Howard Thurman refers to the key to the outer is the inner. And so as we can help bring forth transformation from within, we can see more of the life of freedom externally, but it has to happen on the inside and then out. Would you agree to that?
Absolutely. Excuse me, absolutely. But the other thing that's happening, that's converging right now, which for me, as an individual, I am leaning towards anti-church as institution, because it has not proven to be what it has proposed that it is, has marketed that it is, and which most people who have it in their lives think it is, as a safe harbor, as something that will protect them and give them the best pathway toward holistic health and well-being and so on and so forth. So, along with, this is a time of the fall of empire, and we're seeing it in different ways across the globe in our universe. Part of that's happening recently is the recently released mockumentary Honk for Jesus. There's also a documentary about abuses that happened in Hillsong Church, and at the height of its mega church life and success. And so church as institution absolutely is on the chopping block for me right now. And I think what makes it incredibly egregious is for it to have been considered and self-proclaimed as a safe place, and it has not been. In Blood Brothers, the story of the friendship of Malcolm X and Muhammad Ali, there's a scene in which Elijah Muhammad says something like, "How can you be beholden to something that doesn't protect you?" Talking about Christianity. And I extend that to the Black church. So I think that that's a place to be examined. And like I said before, to be disconnected from. And so the and like you said, the hard work that's necessary, also the courage that's necessary to even come to a place like that, and to reconnect individually so that we can connect collectively, is important toward this goal of full freedom, so that no matter what political stuff is going on, we can always find a place of freedom. One more thing that's important to that. that came out in one of our other conversations when we were using the 1619 Project as a Bible study text is that safety is an important part of freedom that we don't always talk about. And if we don't have clean water, if we don't have the ability to do a whole lot of things, we're not safe. If we don't have housing, reliable housing that's secure for us, all the things that are important in self-sustaining community, then we're not free and we're not healthy.
And I wanted to add financial freedom. Folks are struggling financially. And I did want to just add, Candi, that there are churches, I don't even know if they call themselves churches, but like the Agape Church in California, Dr. Barbara's church, the Hillside here in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. There are places that have kind of veered off of the traditional church and have more of a liberation theology in terms of helping people to grow and to heal. So there are lots of examples in the country. I'm not familiar with all of them, but I just wanted to give credit where credit is due. There are people who have taken that on as a life mission to help people through spiritual development. And most of them would probably use the term spiritual development more than church per se. So I just wanted to add. And we are, gosh, Candi, we're gonna have to have you back again because we're just about out of time, and I feel like we're just warming up again. But this has been a great discussion. I think we've given people a lot to chew on, so to speak.
So I have a fun part. I just want to show you and the audience one of my favorite photos that I took while I was in Ghana.
Oh yeah.
Of this little girl. Let me know if you can.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now I'm trying to get it right. Okay, there you go. So we were riding and the streets are crowded, and the children from age when they start walking seemingly are out with their parents trying to earn income to help take care of the family. So this little girl, she walked up to the car and we had to keep moving. And so when I've been sharing this picture with my clients, I ask, look deeper than the obvious and tell me what you see. And so they think the two fingers represent peace, but what she's asking for is 2 cities, which is the currency for Ghana, to sell the paintbrushes. And we didn't have any small dollars to give her at that time. We came back through, but we didn't see her. But we were all moved, and we just noticed the warmth in her eyes, the vibration in her smile. And I said to a few people, I said, now, since the Queen's death, create in your mind a picture of the Queen and place her beside this little girl and see what images come. What do you see of the image with those two side by side? And in terms of a critical thinking process, what they represent symbolically. And so she was just beautiful in the midst of all that's going on. You would think she would be in school, but if you don't have funds to go to school, you have to help your family survive, and they work very, very hard. So that's just a fun shot that I want to share with you and with the audience.
I saw a comment by somebody. It says, excellent discussion. I think the church as a whole has failed the people. And again, like I said, there are some that are trying to change that. And I'm encouraged by that because, like you said, for so long, people have seen it as a place to gather, a place to exchange information, a place to feel comfort. So, we've got to build on to make sure that the health and wellness piece is part of that mission in the churches. So we are just about gone. Candi, tell us what's next for you before we sign off. What's coming for you? If we haven't mentioned it already, remind us, please.
Yes, Dr. Kynes mentioned it in the beginning in the introduction about the next narrative monologue competition for high school students for Kenny Leon's True Colors Theater here in Atlanta. That's coming up for me. And also the production of a collection of short plays with the Morehouse School of Medicine's Research Initiative Fathers Matter Atlanta, and the continued development of my rather brutally honest stage play trilogy anthology about ancestral economics between Black and white people in the Southern United States, entitled Wild and Free. Continuing to develop that beyond its first installment with some exciting research that will take us to Africa and Europe coming up next year. So as far as more directly coming out of our retreat that we had last week, we're going to be developing those conversations into an online on-demand course, as well as an in-person healing circle that will happen in the spring of next year. So the course we're looking to launch later in this fall of 2022, and then in the spring of 2023, the healing circle. So there's a link to an interest form that we'll put up, fully free interest form, I think is what it's called. bit.ly fully free interest form. So you can click on that and give us your information. We'll keep you up to date on those things coming up. More broadly, to stay connected with me, you can follow me on Instagram at Candi Girl Freedom. And then, of course, you can visit my website, learn more about me and the work that I do. And there's a contact form if you have any questions or anything at candidugas.com. So there you go. Thank you for having me tonight. I enjoyed it.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And we've been blessed by your presence greatly, and so have our listening audience.
Yes, thank you so much, Candi. And thanks for our audience from Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube for joining us. Check out all of our offerings, Bernard and I, Sankofa Institute for Wellness, on our new card. It's called sankofacard.com. It has all of our offerings. We look forward to seeing you all next week. And thanks for all of your kind support and blessings.
Blessings. Ashe.
Ashe.